Okay guys, today I just want to talk about the disadvantages of playing a Lightning Warp Stormweaver. Um, Archmage Ball Lightning Warp Stormweaver is a great build and I have a lot of fun playing it. But while there are a lot of great things about it, there are also a few really bad things that could get you killed in maps. And I feel like all the content creators have not talked about this, but I feel like it's such an important thing for people to know, especially if you are considering between a Spark Stormweaver and a Lightning Warp Stormweaver. This is something that you should definitely know about and consider before you invest into this Lightning Warp Stormweaver build and see if it matches your playstyle and whether you are okay with the cons of it. This is a build feedback from an average player and not someone who has like hundreds of divine orbs to pour into my build. Each individual piece of gear on my character costs 3 divines or less, and some are even less than 1 divine, and I buy them with exalt orbs. The total cost on my gear right now is probably about 10-15 divine orbs, rough estimate, I didn't calculate. But each piece is about 1 to 3 divine orbs. In fact, only one piece of item on me costs 3 divine orbs, and that's actually the 5-socketed lightning warp gem that I got. All the rest, they are 2 divine orbs or less. Okay, so for my build, I'm not gonna be going into huge details about it because I'm using the mainstream lightning warp archmage stormweaver build. So just briefly, lightning warp, bread and butter, you know it, we all know it. Lightning conduit for bosses, single target. Cousin Shock I pair it with Comet, and then for some survivability I added in my own stuff to make it work for me. I am using Orb of Storms supported by Electrocute and Neural Overload. This really helps with the mass mobs. By stopping them literally in their tracks for 5 seconds, it has been such a huge lifesaver for me in maps. It's just really nice to be able to electrocute and stop like Raz and Unique when they still have like a lot of health pool. I am also using Blasphemy to turn my curse into an aura. Right now the curse that I'm using is Temporal Change to really slow down the mobs, because I find that a lot of the times I actually die when the mobs have increased action speed, like movement speed and attacking speed. They rush me from out of the screen and then they stun lock me, and that is basically the most frequent way that I die. After having all these things, I find that my survivability really increased a lot, so this is something that you might want to consider as well. And obviously Grim Feast has been really gaining popularity, and I can see why, because you don't actually need any support gems with it. You just put it on and it boosts your energy shield so much. So I think we all know the pros of this build. It's really fast, it's really huge damage, whether it's mapping or clearing a single target boss. It's all great, like you know this, and this is not what you're here for. So this video is all about the cons of this build, something that I have really never seen anyone else talking about it. But it has caused me so much frustration and workarounds to actually get to a point where I'm mapping comfortably. Or maybe they don't have such issues because their gear is so good and they are able to survive it. But if you are a casual PoE player like I am and you don't have hundreds of divine orbs to pour into your build, so maybe this video will help you out a bit. So going to the first con, which is the most of this con, is that we have to be really close to deal damage to the monsters. So that actually puts us at a higher risk of dying, and of course dying to undeath effects, which means we actually need to put more investment into our survivability as opposed to a Spark Stormweaver who can deal damage relatively from a further distance away. Second con is kind of related to the first one, in that because we do have to be close to mid-range to deal damage to the monsters, we also require the balls to reach the monsters vicinity in order for us to warp there to deal damage. The monsters can actually see us before we do. They either run at you from out of the screen or they start charging out their range attacks from out of the screen, and when you see them, they are in the middle of already attacking you. If you don't have the time to send out your balls and then your balls balls, reaching them in time for you to warp over. It can be really dangerous. And the lightning warp damage process is actually a two-step process, because first of all, you have to send out the ball lightning, and then you warp over to start dealing damage. With all the other skills, you basically start dealing damage the moment you cast your spells. Like with Spark, the moment you cast it, you start dealing damage and it takes out monsters and ensures your survivability. But it's not the same with ball lightning warp. You send out your balls, and in the process of that, you hope you don't get stunned or interrupted, and then you can lightning warp over and kill the monsters. Not to mention that ball lightning has a pretty long cast time. It actually has a long wind up time and a wind down time. You have to wait for the animation to finish completely before you can actually start lightning warping. Archmage do give you a lot more cast speed, so it's not a huge issue, but it can be a severe issue. The fourth con of this build is actually not the monsters, not the cast speed, not the mana, but the terrain. The terrain is against you. We generally want to avoid elevated terrain, pillars and walls, as they actually consume your balls, and when your balls get eaten by the walls and pillars, you have no way of dealing damage. I know everyone prefers big open spaces and avoid tight spaces, that goes without saying, but for ball lightning warp combo, tight spaces are really death traps for lightning warp. If you do not have enough distance from you to the wall, your balls will simply disappear, and then you're not able to deal damage, and then the monsters start swarming you and you die. So not only do I have to pay attention to where the mobs are so I don't warp over there, I also have to pay attention to the terrain and check if any objects are in the way, and there's just a lot more planning ahead that you have to do when you're playing this build as opposed to something else where you just throw out the attacks and they start dealing damage and killing monsters immediately. This is not the case for lightning warp, so this is something that a lot of people do not talk about. So certain maps are just outright terrible for this build. Some examples are Crypt, Hidden Grotto, Mire, Augury, especially Augury. Any maps with pillars and doorways or like it's narrow pathways are very bad for lightning warp. I really hate doors. So in conclusion, I'm not saying this build is bad, obviously not. I love this build so much and I really enjoy playing with it so much. I feel like I almost have an addiction to popping those lightning balls with lightning warp. It just feels so nice, and then you're just like killing everything, on your screen. So obviously I'm not gonna be changing to Spark, because even though I do believe Spark is actually a much safer and easier and better build to play, I just have a thing for like being able to blink into packs of mobs and then killing everything. Even in other games, this is like kind of gameplay that I really enjoy. I'm not sure why. I just think it feels amazing to blink in and just kill everything on sight. It's just great. Zooming around is fun. It does a lot of explosive damage and it's like a pseudo lightning nova spell. I love getting up close to enemies and bursting them to death, but it goes both ways. So if you are just looking for a build that can clear content and farm loot, then I would believe that Spark is actually a better build. But if you are looking for like more excitement and you just want to have like a more risky gameplay like I am, then definitely play with this. Yeah, it's just real fun. The patch is coming. I'm not sure what changes they're going to be making. I feel like lightning warp is great, but it does require quite a bit of investment and workaround to make it work in higher level maps. I just want to make this video because I saw so many lightning warp videos, but like literally none of them have actually talked about all these issues that ball lightning face. The terrain has killed me so many more times than mobs actually have. So I'm gonna leave you with a clip that pretty much sums up my biggest issues with this build. Please enjoy.